last time we chatted with him, it was when he was kindly keeping both hands at 10-2, driving the car that was taking himself and our colleague Tom Pelissero to play golf with Ian Rappaport. He is from the NFL Media Group, my colleague Mike Garafolo, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Mike?
You know, when you talk about us, I'm doing great, Rich. How are you?
I'm great.
When you talk about us all playing golf together, as we're all sitting in three different locations, I know Ian's on the West Coast. I don't know where Tom is today, but I'm at Giants camp right now. It just feels like somebody else's life. Like, oh, wait, it's just a couple of weeks ago we were all playing golf together. Well, forget that.
It's over. It is over, pal. It is over. Tea times are done at present. What's the mood in Giants camp right now, Mike?
A little bit of it's a little mixed, right? Because they're happy Saquon Barkley is back. He did not speak today. Joe Shane, the general manager, did for the first time in a while. Brian Dable as well. Saquon expected to talk in the coming days, but did not speak to the media today. So it's kind of, I don't know, bittersweet, right? Like, he's here. That's great. There's no worry that, he'll come in late in camp and maybe he won't be in football shape and he'll get hurt or something like that. Like that's all been taken care of. He had a diving, toe-tapping catch that he made in the side of the end zone today. So you see his ability and his importance to the offense. But by the same token, he's getting paid less than what he should be. And I know that's the case for a lot of running backs these days, but all along the way there were contract negotiations and better deals that were on the table to be had, and he didn't take them, and now we're where we are right now, which is not to say that a long-term deal might not be possible after the season, but right now for him to be playing on $900,000 of incentives that, by the way, would have been more reachable in one of the recent contract offers that the Giants made that could have helped sweeten that potential deal. It's kind of, I think bittersweet is the best way to phrase it.
Well, Joe Shane used the words "I'm at peace" when he said he tried, Saquon tried. I'm at peace with the way things are right now. We're assuming Saquon not talking today means he's still in search of that peace before saying a piece today. So what was the best and can share with us the actual negotiation sticking points between these two sides that could not result in a long-term deal, Mike?
Well, let's go back to last year at the bye week when they made their first run at it. And I remember Ian Rappaport and I reported on game day morning that Sunday. And the way that I phrased it was the sides felt that it was a good starting point, or at least Barkley's side felt that it was a good starting point for off-season negotiations. Well, that was around, I want to say, $12.5 average per year, $12.5 million average per year at that time. Mm-hmm. And if his side felt like it was a good starting point, the Giants felt like, no, we just made a run at it. Like, we're not just doing this to, hey, let's put a pin in it and come back. Like, when we negotiate, we're negotiating to get it done, and they didn't get it done, so they came back to the table. And there were varying offers throughout the offseason, 12 a year. There's one that even got up to 13 per year. Now, along the way with these numbers that I'm throwing out, the guarantees weren't as high as Barkley and his camp would have liked, along with trying to go for a higher average per year. Mm-hmm. But then when we came down to the wire, now the Giants were at their lowest point of everything they had offered. It was around $11 million per year in base value. There were incentives that could have gotten it higher. And at that point, when Barkley had seen numbers on the table that, again, were 12.5, 12, 13, now we're down to 11. Well, let's get back to where we were. The Giants just wouldn't go there. My understanding, Josh Jacobs got an offer from the Raiders around $12 million per year. Jacobs and Barkley were in communication that final day when the deadline had arrived. And my understanding, if the same deal that the Raiders had offered Jacobs, Barkley would have taken, but the Giants just wouldn't go there at that point. So I got to be honest, I was shocked that day that nothing got done because the Giants were at 11, Barkley was at 12. Usually a gap that small, you're able to bridge it when the deadline approaches. And they just didn't get there. The Giants just didn't want to go there at that point. And it's stunning to me because Barkley had $900,000 in incentives this year, was not a lot to get him into camp. So it's like it really wasn't that far away. So I still remain surprised nothing got done at the deadline on July 17th.
And then, of course, it doesn't help that, Andrew Thomas gets a $117 million contract today. When I say help, I mean in terms of repairing any relationship that could be frayed by all of this. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, but I just to finish the thought here, I know the way you build a team is from the quarterback spot and then the line. That's what you do. And that's what Joe Schoen is doing, right? I mean, with Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, right, getting these deals, and then, Daniel Jones getting his. I just don't understand why you hold the line with somebody like Saquon, or we had this deal. We told you if we pull it, we're not putting it back on the table, and we are sticking to that. And then, the actual dollars that we're talking about that might be different is what, 1/11th the amount of Thomas's entire contract. Right? It doesn't compute, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Mike.
Yeah, and he's now from a roster building standpoint, and they'll never say this publicly, and nobody's really necessarily stated this outright to me when I talk to them behind the scenes. I don't believe that Joe Schoen in this current regime would ever draft a running back second overall. I also don't believe that they want to pay a running back in the $10 million plus range. But when Joe Schoen takes this job, he's inheriting what Dave Gettleman had already kind of laid the groundwork for. And that's a player who he's really good, number one. He's really popular inside the locker room. He is a really good kid. There's certainly no question that they think that he's a outstanding individual. So now it's like, well, we got to kind of pay him, right? But we don't want to necessarily go to a certain point. I know that they, after those deals that I talked about that were on the table were turned down, certainly the fact that they wouldn't go back there when the deadline approached tells you that they didn't want to go there in the first place. And certainly looking back, we're kind of like, oh, geez, we really overextended ourselves on that one. The positions you're talking about, Dexter Lawrence at defensive tackle, Andrew Thomas at left tackle, Daniel Jones at quarterback, those are certainly the ones that I believe that this regime, along with a bunch of other regimes, would love to pour most of the money,
right,
and then figure out where the running back position goes, which the running back market and all those guys out there, I feel for them, but that's kind of the way it goes for most of the league right now.
They also have a high-priced tight end, so I guess we'll just put a button on this Giants conversation by talking about, okay, bottom line is Joe Schoen does have Saquon Barkley in camp, and Daniel Jones paid, and Thomas paid, and they've got Darren Waller in the mix here. So what is the general sense of how improved the Giants are from last year's breakout, if you will, season to this one, Mike?
We were about 20 questions into the press conference today when it was kind of like, oh, what do you expect from Daniel Jones in this offense going forward? Which, by the way, getting Barkley into camp, that's great because now you have these questions for today and then whenever Saquon talks, and then, boom, you're moving on to a team that overachieved last season and feels like they can get going this year. Now, when they brought in Waller, they kind of looked at him as a wide receiver, adding another downfield threat in a market where, listen, the wide receiver market and from a free agent standpoint, was not the greatest this past offseason. So to be able to add a guy that they feel was almost a wide receiver, they were thrilled about that. And that certainly lends to Daniel Jones having to open up a little bit more. Now, they're walking that fine line, and this was a big topic in the spring here when they were in OTAs. They're walking that fine line of he's got to take shots, but he's also got to make smart decisions. Well, sometimes when you take the shots, it's not going to be the greatest decision. So Daniel Jones and a Giants offense that we're going to see open up this season is going to be a fascinating watch early in the season. He's capable of making those throws and making those decisions. They were just schooling him last year to kind of keep it simple and shrink the field wherever they could to kind of play some smart football because from a roster standpoint, they weren't where they expected to be. Well, now they are. So they feel good about him, and that's why they paid him. Everybody said, oh, Daniel Jones, you paid him for that production. Never mind the production in the past. But you pay a guy on a contract extension. It's what you're expecting from him going forward, and certainly they expect more from him.
I mean, you talk about it. Sunday night against Dallas, week 2 at Arizona, and then a Thursday nighter at San Francisco, home for Seattle on a Monday night, at Miami, Sunday night at Buffalo, Washington, and then the Jets before visiting Vegas, Dallas, Washington, home for New England, then a bye. That is a heck of a first dozen weeks, and everything you talked about, fascination, right? You're gonna see it nationally televised against big time opponents. The Jets Giants game, my goodness, week 8 is going to be a total New York media festival, certainly, since I'm assuming the Yankees and Mets will be long gone from the scene by week 8, just to mix sports. So that's pretty big, man. That's pretty huge. Rich, no doubt about it.
Rich, I deserve this. I deserve this. Okay, I live in Hoboken. I live in North Jersey.
Yes, sir.
And I tell people all the time, I don't root for teams. I grew up an Eagles fan, but I stopped being an Eagles fan when I covered the Eagles.
Understood,
right?
yes.
You can't. You see how the sausage is made. You're too close. It's tough to root anyway. So I don't root for teams. But to be in this New York market for the last decade or so,
yes,
and these teams to not be relevant, and not only not be like before October, they've been out of it some of these years. They've started a combined 0-6 or 1-6. And so, trust me, I'm reveling in the fact that both of these teams should be a good watch and a good teams to report on this year.
Mike Garafolo, NFL Network, NFL Media Group, with us right here on the Rich Eisen Show. You and Rap Sheet broke the news about Herbert's contract. What leaps out to you about Justin Herbert's contract, and how long do you think he'll be the highest paid player in the league?
Could be hours, could be days, but Joe Burrow is going to jump him eventually for sure, and we'll be into the mid-50s at that point, which is crazy. I tweeted this out last night. It was just 6 years ago. I mean, you can go back and say, well, 10 years ago, Aaron Rodgers was at 22 a year. 6 years ago, Derek Carr was at 25.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're more than double that. And Joe Burrow looking to stretch it into the mid-50s. So, it's what surprises me, or stands out to me, I should say, about the Herbert contract is the sheer size of it, because this is not a guy who's very – I'm going to say this and everybody's going to say, you got to be kidding me. He's not a very materialistic guy. Like, he's a very simple guy, right? So through the whole thing, it was like, okay, well, Justin may just say, all I need is so much. How much money do I possibly need? Well, you got people around you, whether it's financial advisors or agents or whatever, say, let us do our job, okay? And let's make sure that you're not just allowing this money to burn a hole in your owner's pocket. Like, it's your money. You made it. You deserve it. Now, do we want to do some things to help keep your team competitive throughout? It's certainly not a Patrick Mahomes decade-like deal, and I know that these teams right now, when they have their franchise quarterbacks, are all starting the negotiations with that, saying, hey, look what Mahomes did, and look at the flexibility that he gave the Chiefs moving forward.
Right.
So it's not quite that, and it's half the length of that deal. But the Chargers still feel like they've got enough flexibility, despite the fact that they're doling out $100 million to Justin Herbert in the first new year of the contract. That's pretty good. As Tom Pelissero pointed out, it's a little better than making $4 million. Go from 4 to 100, nice little raise.
Exactly. And so Burrow's around the corner, right? And then what was there, just he was waiting, or what is going on with Cincinnati and Burrow on that front prior to the season?
The guys have done a really good job of keeping this one tight. I do credit them for that. But Joe Burrow's got an agent who in Brian Ayroll, who will drive a hard bargain, and will make it not contentious at times, but you're going to have to work for it as the team. So that's going on right now, and I do believe, from my understanding, they wanted to see where Herbert came in. Because if you're the guy that's really going to set the top of the market, you didn't want to do a deal. Let's say they did it at 53, and Herbert comes in at 52.5, and you say, boy, it should have been a bigger spread. So now that they have Herbert kind of locked in, they know where that bar is to clear. So I keep saying sometime before week 1, he's not running out in the field without a contract extension. Could be closer to today than that, but should be done in short order.
Let's finish up with some running backs that are still out there. I had Dalvin Cook on a couple days ago. He said the Dolphins never put anything on the table for him. He's got nothing on the table right now. He's waiting, is what he said. What do you think? Because it's not just him. It's Zeke, it's Fournette, it's Kareem Hunt. I mean, my goodness, is there a glut of productive running backs sitting ATC right now waiting? What's the scoop here on that? What do you got?
You're looking at one-year deals. Teams willing to pay, let's say for a guy like Dalvin Cook, the number I've heard for teams on one-year deals is somewhere around $4 to $5 million, and then maybe you add incentives on top of that. Now, if you're Cook and you wait, which I think is the right move right now, I mean, what's the rush? I go back to a couple of years ago. I think it was their first preseason game when the Ravens lost J.K. Dobbins. He goes out there, he tears an ACL, and all of a sudden that changes things if you're a running back out there looking for a job. So I think that's probably the best move for him now. Do you wait all the way into the regular season? That's something he's going to have to decide, because if you don't have one of those injuries creating a need, then what do you wind up doing? So I'll be curious to see what happens if we're into late August and he still hasn't jumped. As for Zeke, I mean, to me, and I know folks tried to connect him to Tampa Bay. Skip Pete, his running backs coach, was down there. It just always made the most sense for me, in my mind, for Zeke to go back to Dallas. I mean, and for, they've certainly left the door open for that. So perhaps that's where that one winds up, Rich. But Cook is the interesting one, because he's definitely got tread left on those tires. And in the right situation, boy, he could see a little career renaissance.
Does Belichick and the Patriots bite at any of these guys? What do you think?
Yeah, they brought in Fournette, and again, they're not going to spend a whole lot at that position. So I think they're still in the market for sure for a running back. So maybe they wind up tabbing one of these guys.
Last one for you. I'll ask the question to you that I asked Pelissero when I spoke to him last. The people that you talk to, your ear to the ground, your phone burning up, the team that nobody's talking about, that the rest of the league is talking about having a good 2023, is fill in that blank if you don't mind. You got one?
Well, you asked me, and I said the Packers.
Oh, that's right. You did say that.
People still think, but I want to give you another one.
Okay.
The New Orleans Saints are the team that everybody says the combination of the schedule, right? It sets up really nicely. They play obviously the NFC South in their own division, and then I think they play the AFC South. So that's the kind of team that really could fatten up its record and almost play yourself into the record. Like I've seen the Eagles do that both times they went to the Super Bowl. Was kind of like, you start to get so many wins and you fatten up, and now that builds your confidence and you believe what your record is almost kind of that way. So I could see the Saints being that team, and I know from a talent standpoint, they're the way that they're constructed definitely impresses some folks around the league, and they're higher on Derek Carr than the average fan is as well. So that's the team. I gave you the Packers. Maybe they sneak into the playoffs. I'll give you the Saints as not sneak into the playoffs, but maybe go deep into the postseason. Yeah. I'm really bullish on that.
Then that Week 3 Saints at Packers game is huge in your mind,
for
right
me.
There. Yes, yes. This is about you, Mike. This is about you. We heard before about the Giants and the Jets, and I'm just throwing that out there. That Week 3 game, it's got a lot on the line that maybe others might not realize.
I'm going to have to ask for that assignment for game day morning.
Fantastic. In the meantime, let's chat again. Greatly appreciated. Good seeing you at the summit the other day.
You got it, pal. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Right back at you. That's Mike Garafolo. Check him out on Twitter. A must follow. I follow him. You should as well.
Check him out where, Rich?
On X. Sorry. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.